Have you ever wired your parents $75,000 only to see it turn into cocktails and casino chips in Vegas? I used to believe money within family came with an invisible receipt, paid back through love and gratitude. But what I got was silence. The truth? Not all parents keep their promises. They said it was for roof repairs. I saw Facebook posts from Caesar's Palace instead. I'm not a lawyer, but after 2 years of collecting receipts, texts, and bank records, I filed a civil case against my own mom and dad. If you've ever felt like the walking wallet in your family, this video will show you 3 ways to set legal boundaries without losing your heart, even if you still love them. I used to write question marks in my journal until I saw photos of my father grinning under neon lights. I sued, I won, and the house they used as a lie? It's legally mine now. Watch this video, because if you don't, you might keep mistaking guilt for love. And sometimes, walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. Before we dive into Rachel's story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our powerful stories. I used to believe money given to family came with a receipt, an invisible one, written in trust and returned through gratitude. But when I sent my parents $75,000 that spring, what I got in return wasn't thanks. It was a silence so deep it hummed. It started with a call. Not a holiday call, not a "how are you" kind of call. Just a ringtone buzzing against my kitchen counter as I poured cold brew into a mason jar. Dutch Bros. Their golden eagle had become my guilty pleasure. 2 pumps of vanilla, oat milk, just enough to make it feel indulgent. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said. Her voice was unusually tight, the way it got when she was about to pitch something she didn't want me to refuse. I glanced at the clock. Tuesday, 9:42 a.m. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" She hesitated, always the opening act. "Well, your dad's been worried about the roof and the plumbing. You know how old the house is. We thought we had more time, but it's getting worse." I pressed the jar to my lips but didn't sip. "And you know," she continued, "contractors are impossible right now. If we wait, it's going to double." I could already feel the pull, that old invisible thread between guilt and duty, the one they'd spun since I was a teenager working double shifts while Dad bet on horses and Mom rearranged credit cards like a magic trick. "How much are we talking?" I asked, even though I already regretted it. She lowered her voice like she was embarrassed to say it out loud. 75,000, I laughed before I could stop myself. "Mom, I know, it's a lot. But this house, your father built most of it. It's our home. I hate asking you, but we wouldn't if it wasn't urgent." That last sentence was the needle, the guilt serum. I leaned against the fridge, listening to the hum of the motor as my breath slowed. She kept talking. Something about a contractor from Clovis, how they'd gotten an estimate, how prices were climbing every month. I stopped listening when I felt my chest ache, not from anger, but from knowing I'd say yes. "I'll look into it," I said, already knowing I would. She sent me a sticker a few hours later, a red heart that said, "You're our lifesaver." No other words. That night, I texted Talia. We hadn't seen each other in person in weeks, but she always responded fast. "Rachel, you free tomorrow?" Dutch Bros on me. "Need your lawyer brain." Talia, "If there's caffeine and trouble, I'm in." We met near campus the next morning. She was already waiting with a tablet in one hand and her usual double espresso in the other. Talia always smelled faintly of peppermint and printer ink, a comforting mix that reminded me of late-night study sessions and last-minute outlines. I slid into the metal chair across from her, sun already heating the table. "Okay, don't lecture me yet." Talia raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" I told her everything. The call, the sticker, the 75,000. I even mentioned the heart emoji. She let out a low whistle. "You're funding their renovation dreams now?" "They said plumbing and roofing," I said. "They also said, just a small loan, right?" she replied, already typing something into her tablet. I winced. "You don't think—" She looked up. Vegas is 6 hours away, Rach. I'm just saying, roofs don't usually come with slot machines and comped buffet dinners. I hated how fast my stomach turned. I'd wanted her to tell me I was overthinking it, that parents didn't lie like that. At noon, I walked into Fresno First Bank, still hearing Talia's voice in my head. I'd worn a soft blue sweater. Something about the color made me feel steadier. I slid the transfer slip across the glass and signed my name in 3 practice strokes. The teller smiled politely. "Large transfer today, huh?" "Family emergency," I said. The words tasted like copper. As I left, I pulled out my red leather-bound journal, the one I used to track every dollar since my first paycheck at the coffee shop during college. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, March 27th, 2021, loan to parents, $75,000. Then, after a long pause, I added, expected repayment? 3 days later, I got a single text from my mom. Mom, back from the trip. Let's talk soon. Trip? I stared at the message, rereading it so many times the words started to blur. I opened my banking app, watched the number refresh. The $75,000 was cleared, not pending, not processing, gone. I sat down on the edge of my bed and whispered to the quiet room, "This better be real." Then I reached for the red journal again, and under the question marks, I drew a small dot, not a period, just a mark, something to remind me this chapter wasn't over yet. 2 weeks passed before I let myself look again. I hadn't asked questions right away. Part of me didn't want the answers. I told myself they'd hired someone quiet, someone who didn't need a sign out front or trucks with names on them. Maybe the contractor had canceled. Maybe my parents were waiting for the right time to tell me how it all went. But deep down, I already knew something was off. It started with a Facebook post. I don't even follow Mom's profile that closely. She mostly shares cooking memes and low-res sunset photos with quotes like, "Family is everything." But that afternoon, I was eating leftover pasta in my apartment when I opened my laptop and saw it. A boomerang, a glittering cocktail swirling beside a stack of poker chips, captioned, "Feeling lucky champagne glass slot machine." Location tagged, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas. My fork clinked against the plate. I stared at the screen, then checked the post date. 6 days ago, the same week I transferred $75,000 for urgent home repairs. I clicked her profile. More pictures. A blurry shot of Dad grinning under golden casino lights. A photo of a buffet spread with the words, "Treat yourself. Life's short." Another one of Mom holding a shopping bag that clearly read Forum Shops. Not a single mention of a leaking roof. No contractor, no ladder, just chips, drinks, and smiles. I don't remember standing up. I only remember pacing, tight circles between my couch and the window. I opened the banking app again as if the money might somehow be back. It wasn't. I closed it and grabbed the red leather journal. Flipped to the loan entry. Next to the question marks, I wrote one word in small, careful print. Lied. Then I underlined it twice. Later that evening, I called. I figured they deserved the chance to explain. "Hey, sweetheart," Mom chirped when she picked up. I swallowed. "Did you go to Vegas?" There was a pause. "What?" "Oh, yeah, just a short getaway. Nothing big." I sat on the edge of my bed. "With the money I sent?" "Well," she began, stretching the word like taffy, "we needed a break. Your father's stress levels were sky high. The house stuff was so overwhelming. We thought, take a couple days. Reset." My jaw tensed. "And the repairs?" "We're still getting quotes," she said too fast. "It's a process." She passed the phone to Dad. His voice was relaxed, low. "I worked hard my whole life. I deserve a little fun now and then, Rach." I didn't say anything. "What, you think we blew all of it?" He laughed, but it didn't sound amused. "You're always so serious." "Is the money gone?" I asked. Silence. Then Mom's voice came back, softer now. "Probably." That was the moment I knew I couldn't unknow this. The next day, I visited their house, not to confront, just to see. There was no contractor van in the driveway, no signs of any work being done. The same cracked shingle sat on the edge of the roof, curling upward like a question mark. Their neighbor, Mr. Ferris, was out watering his hydrangeas. "Hey, Rachel," he called. "Haven't seen you in a while. Your folks said they were off to Vegas, packed 2 big suitcases." I smiled tightly. "Yeah," I heard. Back home, I sat at my desk and opened a new Google Drive folder. Title: Loan Abuse, Linwood Family. I didn't even know what I meant to do with it yet. I just needed a place to keep the pieces. I uploaded screenshots of the Facebook posts, downloaded hotel receipts Mom had accidentally posted to her memories album, opened a blank document and began logging dates. I added one more file, my journal page. I took a photo of it, that red underline still fresh. Later, I called Talia. "This is what I was afraid of," she said after I told her everything. "They're playing emotional roulette." I exhaled. I just didn't think they'd actually spend it all. Not like this. "They're not thinking like parents," she replied. "They're thinking like people who believe they'll never be held accountable." There was a long pause before she added, "You should document everything. No calls, text only. Save every message, just in case." That night, I went to the fridge to grab a bottle of sparkling water and caught sight of the note stuck beside the grocery list. "Dinner with Mom next Saturday?" I hadn't taken it down. I hadn't had the heart, but I picked up a red pen and drew a single line through it. Then I sat back at my desk, reopened my finance journal, flipped to the roof repair entry, and re-highlighted the title in red. Underneath, I wrote, "Lied." This time, I didn't underline it. I boxed it in. The smell of baked chicken and overcooked rice didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like an obligation, one I had postponed for months. Summer in Fresno always had a way of wrapping everything in heat and dust, and that evening was no exception. My parents' front lawn looked the same, half green, half forgotten. But when I stepped inside their house, something had changed. It wasn't visible. It was in the air. In me. "Hey, sweetheart," Patricia greeted, wiping her hands on a faded floral apron. "We haven't seen you since Easter. Sit. Your father's watching the game." Ronald gave a nod from the recliner. The TV blared a replay of a baseball game, but I could barely hear it over the hum in my chest. The red file in my tote bag felt heavier with every step. Dinner was quiet. A few forced updates about cousins I barely spoke to. The way the neighbors' new landscaping was too much. Patricia passed me the salt like nothing had happened. Like $75,000 hadn't vanished in a sea of neon lights and buffet tickets. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me gently. "You'll be coming for Thanksgiving, right?" I took a sip of water and set the glass down deliberately. "We'll see." Her eyes blinked, surprised, but she didn't press. I waited until the plates were cleared before reaching into my bag. "I brought something," I said, placing the red folder on the table. Neither of them reached for it. "What's that?" Ronald asked, not looking away from the TV. "Receipts," I said. "Photos, credit card statements, hotel bookings, social media posts. I printed them all." The room went still. "You spent every dollar I gave you," I continued, "and not on a single shingle or pipe. You went to Vegas. You gambled it away." Patricia's fingers tightened around a paper napkin. Ronald finally muted the television. "We needed a break," he said, his tone cool. "You've always been so uptight, Rachel." "I paid your electric bill when I was 16, I said. "You never asked how I managed. Just assumed I would." "That's different," he shot back. "You were helping out, like family should." I leaned forward. "This isn't help, this is theft disguised as guilt." Patricia's lip trembled, but she said nothing. A single tear rolled down, and she wiped it quickly, as if even her sadness had to stay polite. "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes?" I bet you can't guess what's coming next, but before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. "You're being dramatic," Ronald grunted. "We've done everything for you." "No," I said, standing. "You did everything for yourselves, and you expected me to keep covering the tab." "We're your parents," he snapped. "I'm not a bank," I replied, "and I'm no longer your emotional hostage." That's when his voice rose. "The house is still in our name. Don't think you can take it from us." I stared at him, unmoved. "That's what the court is for." I turned, walking out before they could find more words to throw. I left the red file on the table. I didn't care if they opened it or set it on fire. Out in the car, I sat for a moment in silence. The heat had soaked into the seats and my hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Ain't no mountain high enough. There ain't no valley low enough. The song poured through the speakers, louder than I expected, but I didn't turn it down. I rolled the window halfway and let the dry air cut through my thoughts. The music carried me for a while, until I felt my breath return to normal. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A message from Talia. "Build the case, but be ready for them to retaliate." I texted back one word: already started. When I got home, I opened the Google Drive folder and renamed the main file, Linwood v. Linwood, Prep Doc 1. Then I did something small but symbolic. I opened my journal, flipped to the contact list in the back where I had Mom and Dad with their cell numbers, and carefully rewrote it. Patricia Linwood, Ronald Linwood. No longer Mom, no longer Dad. Just people with names, people who had chosen silence over accountability. I closed the journal and slid it back into the drawer. Tomorrow, I'd call Talia and talk next steps. Maybe we'd file something. Maybe we wouldn't. But one thing was clear. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about drawing a line I should have drawn years ago and not looking back. The winter sky hung low and lifeless the morning I walked into Talia's office. The blinds were half closed, letting in slanted light that cut across the dark hardwood like caution tape. Her desk was buried in papers, bank statements, highlighted emails, notes, and red ink. Right in the center sat a manila folder with my name on it. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Talia didn't rush me. She leaned back in her chair, her glasses slipping slightly down her nose. "It's all here," she said gently. "Every transfer, every receipt, every message. Once you sign, we file. Case number 23, FC0812. It sounded sterile, like a medical form, like something fixable. But this wasn't a cut or a break. It was years of being emotionally kneaded into the shape my parents needed. I wrapped both hands around my mug. The coffee had gone cold over an hour ago. "Do most people feel relieved or sick when they sue their family?" I asked. Talia's lips pressed into a line. "They feel human." I picked up the pen. My fingers hovered for a moment. I remembered being 16, covering the electric bill from my part-time job. No one had asked where the money came from. They'd just smiled and said, "Good girl." This wasn't revenge. It was redefinition. I signed. Back at my apartment, I did what I always did when things felt too big. I organized. My dining table became a war map. I laid everything out. Printouts of bank activity, photos of Mom and Dad in Vegas, screenshots of Patricia's "feeling lucky" to post, the letter she'd sent in her loopy cursive. "You used to care," it said. "Now you just want revenge." I slid it into a folder marked Emotional Manipulation, Exhibits C and D. There was no ceremony, no drama, just facts. I taped receipts to paper, clipped everything in chronological order, and saved a cloud backup labeled Linwood Civil Master File. That night, I microwaved Trader Joe's spinach ravioli and poured half a glass of red wine. I sat alone at the kitchen island, the same one where I'd once taught my mom how to make banana bread. I ate quietly, each bite sticky with guilt and liberation. The court notice was mailed the next morning. I tracked it online. 3 days later, confirmation arrived. Delivered. Ronald didn't call. He posted on Facebook. It was vague but loud. Imagine raising a child just to be dragged into court for loving too much. No name, no context. But the comments made the subtext scream. "Oh, Ron, I can't believe she'd do that." Family means forgiveness. praying for peace. Patricia hit like within 5 minutes. I closed the app, reopened it, then finally took a screenshot. I sent it to Talia with a single text. "I'm ready to make this public." She responded within a minute. "Then we'll do it right." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a blank Word doc and began typing. Title: Timeline of Deceit, Linwood Financial Summary. Each entry included dates, amounts, and corroborating evidence. But there was more between the lines. Notes like, "He said it was for plumbing," or "No contractor ever showed." I wasn't just making a case. I was making peace with facts I'd spent years trying to paint prettier. My phone buzzed again, another notification from Ronald's post. I flipped the screen face down. Later that evening, I sifted through old notebooks. I found one from 2018, where I'd once written a goal: save enough to buy a home by 2023. I stared at the sentence, then closed the cover and placed it in a drawer. As I got ready for bed, I passed the hallway mirror and caught a glimpse of myself. My face looked older. Not aged, just stripped of anything that didn't serve me anymore. Beneath the tired eyes, there was something else. Calm. Resolve. I brushed my teeth slowly, letting the silence settle around me. My parents once prided themselves on being different. "We're not like other families," Mom had said once. "We stick together." But love that demands silence isn't love. It's control, and I'd been quiet long enough. I climbed into bed, the cold sheets stiff against my skin. Outside, the wind tapped at the windows, soft but insistent. Tomorrow, everything would begin, and for the first time in months, I felt ready. I wore the same navy blazer I had on the day I walked across the stage at Fresno State. The courtroom air was too cold for October, and my fingers kept adjusting the cuffs out of habit. Talia sat next to me, flipping through our evidence binder like she was reviewing a recipe. Calm, clinical, exact. Civil Courtroom 4B had no drama in its design. Pale gray walls, wooden benches, a worn seal of California mounted above the judge's seat. Just the quiet weight of formality, as if even the walls demanded your truth. Ronald and Patricia Linwood sat across the aisle, my parents by blood but not by loyalty. Mom's lipstick was too red for a courthouse. Dad wore the same expression he had when he used to discipline me, calm, almost smug, like he was already sure of the outcome. Judge Barnes entered with a nod, eyes unreadable behind thin glasses. "Let's begin," he said. And with those 2 words, I stepped into the day I'd been building toward for 2 years. Ronald went first. He leaned into the microphone, voice smooth. "My daughter gave us that money. She never said it was a loan. We thought it was a gift from a loving child who wanted her parents to get by." Talia stood. Permission to present Exhibit C, text message exchange dated April 12th, 2021. The judge nodded. The screen lit up behind me. My words, plain and simple. "This is temporary. I'll need it back by summer." I didn't look at my father. I didn't have to. Talia walked slowly back to her seat. "Ms. Linwood, would you like to speak?" My heels clicked as I approached the stand. I took the oath, then sat down and looked directly at Judge Barnes. "I've spent my whole life treating silence like safety," I began. "When I was 12, my father told me, 'Your job is to be obedient.' That was the year I started paying the electric bill with money from my part-time job at the library. They never asked how I managed, just assumed I would. That pattern never changed. The $75,000 wasn't a gift. It was a request they made in desperation, and I answered out of habit, not freedom." I paused. Patricia wouldn't meet my eyes. When I asked if the money was gone, my mother didn't deny it. She said, "Probably." That one word unraveled years of rationalization. I had been paying for love with debt, but love shouldn't come with receipts. There was a murmur from the back of the room. Maybe it was a journalist, maybe a cousin I hadn't seen in years. I didn't turn to look. My story wasn't for them. It was for me. Then it was Patricia's turn. Her hands shook as she took the stand. Her eyes, once so sharp when scanning my report cards or picking at my outfits, now looked like she hadn't slept. She dabbed her nose with a tissue and said softly, "I knew the money was for the house. I knew it. But Ronald said we needed a break. And we did. It was just supposed to be one trip, a reset. I thought we'd figure it out later." She looked at me then, and for a moment I saw the woman who used to braid my hair before first grade. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But apologies at that stage were like flowers at a funeral, too late to save the living. Talia didn't cross-examine. She didn't need to. The truth was already in the open, fragile and loud. Judge Barnes adjusted his glasses. The courtroom fell into a hush. Based on the presented evidence, including financial records, testimony, and prior communications, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Rachel Linwood. The property deed for 1436 Woodlawn Avenue shall be transferred to her name within 45 days. Court is adjourned. The sound of the gavel was soft but final. As people began to rise, Ronald leaned toward me. His voice was a whisper but full of venom. "You'll die alone, Rachel. No one wants someone like you." I met his gaze, not blinking. "I'd rather be alone than used," I said. Then I turned and walked out without another word. Outside, the sun had dipped below the courthouse roofline. The air had that dry, sharp bite of late fall. I took the folder with the ruling and slipped it into my red leather finance journal, right beside the entry with the question mark, the one that had once said, "Loan for roof repairs." As I reached the parking lot, I passed a local reporter scribbling notes. Someone called my name. I didn't stop. I wasn't ready to explain the story yet. But one day, I would. In the car, the radio played something soft and old. James Taylor, I think. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe deeply. I just stared through the windshield and thought, for the first time in years, that maybe this was what justice looked like. Quiet, steady, earned. And then I drove home, alone, but free. The key felt heavier than I expected. Maybe it was the cold metal, or maybe it was the years behind it, the lies, the guilt, the weight of obligation. I held it for a moment before sliding it into the front door of 1436 Woodlawn Avenue. The lock clicked. It didn't resist. For the first time, the house opened to me without conditions. The hardwood floors were cold under my boots. Sunlight poured in through the uncovered windows, casting long stripes across the dust in the air. The rooms echoed with every step. No furniture yet, no smells of dinner or perfume or guilt, just the creak of old wood and my own breathing. The house was technically mine now, papers filed, deed transferred, but it still felt like I had to ask permission just to stand in it. I didn't rush. I walked through each room slowly, letting the silence settle on my shoulders like a shawl. The kitchen still had the same cracked tile near the sink. The fridge hummed faintly, half empty. I reached for the counter instinctively, and for a second I thought I'd see a post-it from my mom. "Pick up milk?" But there was nothing, only the red leather journal in my hand and the hush of reclaimed space. I took a deep breath and turned the pages until I found it. The entry dated April 2021. "Loan for roof repairs, $75,000, it read, with a single question mark scribbled beside it. I stared at that mark. It had hovered over my life for almost 3 years, hovered over my judgment, my trust, my love. I clicked my pen. On the line beneath it, I wrote, "Closed. Fully paid. No balance due." The words didn't feel triumphant. Just clean, like the final wipe of a countertop after a long meal, like closure that doesn't need applause. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. I hesitated before playing it, but curiosity won. It was Patricia's voice. Tired. Distant. "We won't fight the ruling. Do what you want, Rachel. You got what you needed." There was no apology, no warmth, but no threat either. Just surrender, wrapped in resignation. I deleted it. A moment later, the screen lit up again. "Talia, I'm proud of you. she said as soon as I answered. Not because of the case, because you saw the truth and didn't look away. That takes guts. Most people would have stayed silent. Thanks, I said, leaning against the bare wall. I just wanted it to stop. The lying, the pretending, the wait. She was quiet for a beat, then added, I always knew you had it in you. Call me if you need help setting up the will or, a Wi-Fi plan that doesn't suck. That made me laugh. A real one, from the gut. It was the first time I'd laughed in this house without flinching. After the call, I walked to the front door and opened it wide. Cold air rushed in. Across the street, Mrs. Guthrie was coming down her porch steps with something in her hands, a casserole dish. She smiled gently as she got closer. Figured you could use something warm tonight. Moving in's hard, even when it's just you. I thanked her, my fingers brushing the foil cover. Before turning to leave, she touched my arm lightly. You did the right thing, she said, even if it didn't feel like it every day. I watched her walk back, her shoulders hunched from age but still steady. The smell of baked noodles and cheese filled the hallway as I closed the door behind me. Later that evening, I opened my laptop and created a new Wi-Fi account under my name, for the first time ever. The confirmation email came through in seconds. I changed the router password to something I wouldn't forget, FREEDOM 2024. As dusk settled, I pulled the curtains shut. The rustle of fabric, the thunk of the rod settling into place, it all felt like punctuation. I switched on the lights one by one, letting each room glow gently into life. No one else would forget to pay the bill. No one else would turn them off in punishment. They were mine to keep on. I walked to the kitchen, slid the journal onto the counter, and laid my palm on its cover. For a moment, I stood still, not thinking, just breathing. And then I opened the front door one more time and placed the new welcome mat down. Black. Simple, bold, white letters. My rules. My life. I stepped back inside, locked the door behind me, and felt something inside me click into place. Not victory, not revenge. Peace. When I turned the key and stepped into the quiet house, I didn't just claim a deed. I reclaimed a part of myself I thought I'd lost. Peace doesn't always arrive with celebration. Sometimes it's just the absence of fear. I've learned that love without respect becomes control, and silence in the name of family can cost you more than money. It can take your voice. But we always have the right to draw the line, to choose kindness without surrendering our dignity. If this story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear what stayed with you. Your thoughts might just be what someone else needs to find their own peace. If this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories about resilience and hope. Thanks for watching.